Yep, it says recording. You did it. Well, welcome everybody. This what a week, what a few weeks it's been since we saw you last. Very grateful all of you all could join in. Diane sent out an agenda to everyone that included some facilitation instructions. So a couple of things just to know. Number one is Diane is managing the muting of everybody and the unmuting of folks. And so right now, everybody but me, I think, should be muted. And then I use the chat bar in Zoom in order to, sorry, there's a good echo. Maybe some other folks are not on mute. But anyway, use the chat bar to write questions. Go ahead and start introducing yourself in the chat bar so that people know who you are and that you're here. And then throughout the meeting, if you have questions or comments, put those in chat. Folks from MDHI will help track what those questions were, and we'll get those asked as we go along. So that's sort of how we'll handle the meeting today. And that's sort of the deal. I don't know, is Susie Street, is she here with us today? I know she got called in to sort of do emergency coverage at the shelter for Family Tree, so that may be the case. Looks like it is.
Yeah, I don't see Susie in here yet. And then Angie, when you have a second, I just want to throw out, so everyone, you come in muted, and then if you do want to say something, mention it in the chat, because it'll just be hard to facilitate this many people. And so Angie or I'll let you know you can go ahead and speak, and then you can unmute yourself and then remute when you're done. So the meeting we can all hear.
Perfect. Thank you, Diane. And thank you just in general for getting all this together and getting it going. So today we're going to take the bulk of the time just to get updates from the different counties on, what's going on, sort of county specific, as well as hearing statewide and the regional perspective from MDHI, what we're doing as a community of homeless service providers, advocates, and just seeing how we're coordinating together to try and help bring services and connections and safety resources to folks experiencing homelessness. So with that, we'll just sort of jump in unless there's anything else we need to do initially, Diane.
No, I think we're good to go. Thank you, Angie.
Yeah. So do we want to just go in the order of what's on the agenda? Do we have Heidi from Boulder County here?
I am. I'm here. Good morning.
Great. We'll just let you jump in.
Thank you. So Heidi Grove, Homeless Solutions for Boulder County Systems Manager. And Diane and Rebecca had asked that I kind of jump on and give you guys an update on what we have stood up in the last 7 days in Boulder County. As a caveat, I can only do 20 minutes because I have to run off to another meeting. But I do know that I saw in the chat that some of our providers are on this call, and so I have any questions, I would defer to them. So Melissa, please feel free to chime in after I hang up or in the meantime. Sound good, Melissa?
Yep, sounds good.
Cool, thank you. So we started kind of preparing for the COVID-19 about a month ago. It feels like 5 years ago at the same time, and kind of envisioned this respite facility, and then we had to escalate that process and stand it up in 4 days the moment we got a positive in Boulder County. So what we've done is we have repurposed the East Boulder Rec Center for what we're calling our COVID Recovery Center. And so anybody who is presenting with symptoms at the shelters, which we are doing screenings the moment people are showing up to access sheltering, the moment anybody shows symptomatic, we actually send them to the COVID Recovery Center, and it is split into 2 different wings. One wing is for those who are symptomatic and either waiting for testing or just maybe have pneumonia, so that they can have access to respite. It's a 24-hour facility. We have medical reserve corps there to monitor symptoms as they await for potential testing. If testing is not necessary and it has not reached that escalation, they can still stay there until they're well to be discharged. And then the other side of the wing is for those who have tested positive for COVID-19 and need to be in quarantine. So we are hiring right now on a revolving basis staff to assist in manning that location 24/7. So that's kind of what we're doing in a nutshell. We've been building this plane as we fly, as I'm sure most of you guys are in the same boat. And so far it has seamlessly. We've had our hiccups, but we definitely have been adjusting accordingly. Melissa, do you have anything you want to add?
No, I think you got it.
Do you want to say anything from a provider's perspective, how it's looking?
Yeah, so like you said, we've had some hiccups, but we've adjusted. The clients are being served. I think as a service provider, it's been nice to be able to have a safe place to send anybody that is presenting ill, so that we can try to keep the majority of the population healthy. So no, it's been great setting it up, and I'm sure we'll do better in another couple of days. Our hiccups should mostly be ironed out, and yeah, I think we're doing okay.
Any questions? I see we have a question. How many people are being served at each? So we have so far had no positives for COVID amongst our unhoused population. So there's that, which is great. But we do have 6 people at what we're calling the CRC, COVID Recovery Center, who are symptomatic, and we're making sure that they are getting adequate medical attention to recover from whatever illness they are experiencing. Any other questions, Diane? Matt, is there anything you want to add? Because I know you've been part of these conversations too.
No, I think that covers it, Heidi. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. And the question, the medical care is coming from the Medical Reserve Corps. As you guys know, with most communities, we have stood up our EOC, and because we have the EOC stood up, we were able to tap into that FEMA funded source of medical providers. Any other questions?
Great.
Funding. Who's funding costs involved for the recovery center?
So it's actually, Homeless Solutions for Boulder County is a multi-municipality and county effort. And so both Longmont, the city of Longmont, city of Boulder, and Boulder County are funding it in different chunks. So the staffing for the CRC is 100% funded by Boulder County. Some of the purchasing of the PPE is coming from public health through Boulder County. And some of the needs have been funded through the city of Boulder, and then transportation is split between city of Boulder and city of Longmont, as we are running a van route to pick up people to make sure that they have access to the CRC and don't have to access RTD when they're feeling ill. Is there other questions that are coming up?
We have a question about how your volunteer pool is.
Our volunteer pool right now is mostly repurposed city and county staff, but we do have some individuals from the community that have leaned in and taken shifts. We didn't want to 100% rely on volunteers, as that's a heavy ask. So that's why the county decided to pay for full-time staff to man the facility. but we are filling the gaps with volunteers as we are actively hiring. So I've been on rapid speed dating of hiring for the last 3 days. And so now we have, I think, 7 staff that are being onboarded as we speak.
And I think there is a kind of question that will come up from you, Jesse, and let me know. For each of the communities, can you let us know if any of your shelters are not going to be open, particularly where Jesse's wondering about Boulder's overnight shelter?
No, all our shelters are fully operational. The reason we stood up the CRC was to make sure that we could, A, provide a space for people to recover, and B, keep our shelters healthy.
It might be of interest to note that we are also working on opening up a day shelter so that the homeless population has access to restrooms, washing hands, place to sit for a little bit, be screened throughout the day. So that looks like it'll be open for about 4 hours a day.
And Heidi, I'm not sure if you could see I think you can see the chat that's coming through. A couple more questions about how many shelters does Boulder have, and a provider is wondering if you could share the RFP that you used with other communities.
So we did not do an RFP. This was something that we took on as a county and and multiple municipalities, because we saw we are really lucky to have one of our directors of Housing and Human Services who actually was in Africa when the Ebola outbreak happened and ran and led that kind of initiative. So he has the experience of on a smaller scale pandemic. So he knew exactly what to do and where to kind of move the parts and find the funding. So we did not do an RFP. We just repurposed city property to make it happen. And what was the other question?
How many shelters does Boulder have?
So if you're including domestic violence shelters, youth shelters, and adult shelters, we have 6 in the county.
Thanks, Heidi.
You're welcome. Any other questions, Diane, before I jump off?
I don't see any on here, and thanks, Melissa, for holding back up if it's needed.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank
Bye,
you so much.
Melissa. Thank you. I'll touch base with you later.
All right. Thanks, Heidi.
You're welcome. Bye, guys.
All right, thank you so much. And that's wonderful to hear about all that Boulder County is doing and all the preparations they had. I'm going to ask Diane if you will be my eyes on the chat bar. I get too distracted if I try to read it and talk at the same time. My name's Angie. I'm one of the co-chairs for this committee, and I'm also the Homelessness Policy and Program Manager for the City of Denver Department of Housing Stability. And I'm going to give a update for what's going on in Denver. I'm going to try and be as comprehensive as I can, knowing that there are a lot of involved agencies and a lot of moving pieces. So, please feel free to ask questions. I'll answer what I can, but I'm also happy to take questions back and get responses back out to folks on what I'm not able to speak to. And then I also know there are multiple providers and different folks on the phone who may also be able to help chime in and offer clarity. So a couple of things. Heidi mentioned EOC, that's Emergency Operations Center, and is something that City and County of Denver has had operational for a couple of weeks now. It's basically a place where we have representation or liaisons from just about every city agency all together physically in one place at a city building, making real-time decisions and working to coordinate efforts. And so host has been there in the room since EOC opened up. And we also have a department-specific sort of operational team, which myself, James Ginsburg, Chris Connor, Jennifer Bice, Jared Powell, are all part of, along with a few other folks from our team at the Department of Housing Stability. So we're all pretty deep in it every day, just trying to make sure that we are talking with other city agencies, that we're coordinating our communications and efforts, and working to elevate the needs of our residents experiencing homelessness during this time. So a couple of new resources that have come out of our planning that we can talk about today. Similar to sort of what Heidi was discussing, we have something that we're calling supplemental shelter. So this is something that our shelter providers are referring guests who may be experiencing some different symptoms, maybe symptoms that are looking like COVID, but maybe other respiratory distress symptoms. And they're really needing to be in a facility that's able to accommodate for the 6 feet of social distancing. And so the supplemental shelter, folks are screened at entry to our other shelter facilities, and they are able to get transported to supplemental shelter where they can stay either until they're feeling well and their symptoms have resolved, or maybe it becomes apparent that they need to get testing for COVID, or they need to, go see a healthcare provider. And so that is happening. We first started in a rec center, and then we moved into another city-owned facility where we're currently doing operations out of. That facility is able to hold about 49 people so far. I think the biggest night we had like 17, I believe, maybe only 14. So we're still doing okay on capacity there, and just starting to see a good, it's good to have an option, like Heidi said, an exit valve, so that we can make sure we're helping keep our larger shelters healthy. The other resource that we've been able to activate is something we're calling activated respite. So year-round, we have something called respite, where people who are, going through an acute medical condition, but no longer need hospital level of care and need to be discharged, but maybe aren't quite healthy enough to get back into regular shelter, and certainly maybe wouldn't be healthy to be on the streets. Those are folks that we're able to help out with a respite stay, either at one of our partner provider programs or in a motel. And so sort of borrowing from that model, we've stood up what we're calling activated respite. These are hotel rooms that these are for people who have had a COVID test, but they're awaiting the results. So we don't know if they're positive or negative, and therefore we need to isolate them until the time we get those results back. The other client group for this resource would be folks who have received their results and they tested positive for COVID-19. So that is what activated respite is. Both of those resources are 24/7. Both of them include some element of, light touch medical care, people sort of just checking in and making sure that folks are doing okay with symptoms, includes meals being delivered to them. We're really trying to make sure that people have what they need to be able to shelter in place, just like our housed neighbors are doing. And so that's the deal on those two resources. They're being staffed through a variety of different avenues. We've got Department of Parks and Rec and Department of Human Services, because they've both had to close their physical locations to outside guests. They've been working to reassign staff, which is something that happens in city emergencies, where staff can be reallocated or reassigned to different duties to fill in where needed. And so our partners at Human Services have really stepped up and are taking over a lot of the management of the supplemental shelter, as well as some on-site help for the activated respite locations. And then we've also got provider partners, our partners at VOA, who typically run one of our respite programs. They have offered their units and some of their staff and cleaning staff and things to scale that up a bit. And then we're currently working with the Coalition for the Homeless, who runs the city's bridge housing program, and they're in negotiations with a couple of large motels to take over a significant number of rooms. I think the first motel we're looking at will be 100 plus rooms, and CCH would be the provider of some basic services for the guests in activated respite in those rooms. So it's really a scaling issue right now. We're working to scale up, so that we can serve the number of folks that we may see if there were to become significant spread in our shelters or in our community of folks experiencing homelessness. So I want to take a breath and pause and see what questions folks have about those two resources.
Yeah, Angie, first off, from Melanie, we're wondering who's leading the City of Denver's response?
So City of Denver's response is really being led by Mayor Hancock. It's also being led by the entire administration. Like I said, the Emergency Operations Command Center has the Director of Public Health and Environment, Britta Fisher, our Director of Housing Stability, has been in there most of the time. And when she's not in there, it's one of our deputy directors. It's really folks from appointee level as well as their delegates. And then daily we're having phone calls within the department, and then I was going to speak to it in a minute, some of the other coordination that's happening across the homeless community with providers and things. So
and who's the point person for homelessness within that group?
So Britta Fisher is our Director of Housing Stability, and as homelessness falls within the Department of Housing Stability. She's really the lead, but like I said, several of us from our team are really integrally involved day in and day out with this.
Absolutely. And also wondering about, are there any shelters that are closing for Denver? Are they all still open at this point?
So all of our large shelters are still open right now. We've got, Samaritan House. We just received word that they're going to stop taking intakes into their longer term program for women, but their nightly women's emergency shelter is still operational. Rescue Mission is still operational. They did consolidate into just 2 of their facilities due to staffing limitations and inability to, the way the beds were in that particular facility, they wanted to, I think they were concerned about it being too close. So they've been doing just their shelter operations at the Lawrence Street facility and the 48th Avenue shelter. Salvation Army Crossroads is still operational. Dolores Project still operational, though they did change their intake process. We know that Family Promise has sort of switched up operations and they're still serving the families that they had, but they've moved them into motel rooms for the time being to help with social distancing. Family shelter is still happening through the contract motels that the city has, and our standard, motel voucher procedures. Unfortunately, because DHS is currently closed to outside guests, the only access point for those family shelters is currently the nighttime voucher writer at the Samaritan House. So folks arriving to Samaritan House between 5:30 and 8:30 are able to be resourced to a motel room, families with minor children, as there's vacancy and availability. And so that's continuing to operate. So no major disruptions to our general safety net shelters. What I'll say is I've been accepting updates from the community and have been trying to send those back out every day so that all of our providers know, okay, here's the exact nuances of what number you call and when to get into Dolores Project, or here's the programs that have been stopped, but here's the new programs that have started. And so we've been working to send that out. If you are a provider that's working closely with folks in Denver, and you have not been getting my daily update, if you would like to send me an email, at angela.nelson@denvergov.org. I will get you added to my distribution list and make sure that that gets out to you as we have those updates available. It really is focused on Denver resources only, just trying to keep our finger on that pulse. Diane, were there other questions just specific to activated respite or supplemental shelter to go through right now, or should I just keep going?
Yeah, sorry, it took me a minute to find my mute button. Huh.
Mhm.
So there is some questions around testing and the process for testing. So if you're going to go through that in a minute, we can wait on that. Also kind of wondering, like, just the number of respite beds and which motels are going to be used. So I guess, I was like reading the comments, but did you already go over how that process is working for people to be referred to respite beds? Or
I did not. Yeah.
Okay.
So thanks for those questions, everybody. So to start, we have 20 rooms for activated respite. Referrals into those rooms are only happening through our healthcare providers. So we are reserving those spaces for people who have received testing or who have received positive results. And so we're working really closely with Stout Street Health Center and with Denver Health. I think there are two major referral partners at this point. We've set up a dispatch line that's staffed 24/7 that they're able to call into in order to arrange transport to the activated respite facility. So to answer the question, which motels, right now we're utilizing the West building at the VOA Family Motel. And then we have a couple of other sites that are still currently in negotiation, so not able to speak to at this point. But, we're trying to get stuff that's available and located near transit. But again, the hope is that these are folks who are going to be sheltering in place, not coming and going. It's definitely not just a vacation at the Holiday Inn. It is a place to quarantine, to try and help them recover, but also to keep the community safe from further spread. So again, we're hoping to scale up to have over 100 rooms, new rooms coming online, hopefully within the next week or so. And our plan right now is to just continue to scale as needed. And I'm sorry, was there another? Yep. So referral points. So again, right now, until we are able to scale up to a larger volume, referral is only happening from healthcare providers and only happening from healthcare providers located in the city and county of Denver. So we've been working with our regional providers, folks from the VA, folks from UC Health, who are saying, hey, we have someone who came from Denver Shelter. We know they're our Denver person, but they just happen to be out here for healthcare. How can we make a referral back? And so we've been working on a case-by-case basis with those folks to still facilitate a referral, but we just aren't able to provide the transport from Denver Parks and Rec staff from those regional centers. So that's sort of how we're working through it right now. Other questions on just those two resources?
Hey, Ann. So there's some question on like funding sources and like how is this process being funded for the respite rooms?
I'm not sure that I have a super specific answer. Right now, we have some existing contracts that are already with the VOA Family Motel for respite. We have existing contracts that are already with the Coalition for the Homeless for services for folks in using motels as temporary housing. And so we're looking to amend those contracts and update those scopes of work and infuse those contracts with some funding to support this work. where exactly those dollars are pulled from, I'm not sure. I would have to bring that answer back when I have it. I know that we are trying to tap into FEMA dollars. We're using, different funding within the city. We're also, using funding that was allocated for motel vouchers. So we're just pulling from kind of turning over the couch cushion, so to speak, to try and find any unallocated funding to help. But I'll figure that out and let folks know.
Yeah, and 2 questions from earlier before I lose them in the chat. What city facility is being used for the supplemental shelter? Did you mention?
Yeah, so right now we are at Thule Hall. We were at St. Charles Rec Center, and then needed to move to another facility and move to Thule Hall. So if I have it correct, I think it used to be a halfway house and is now being used for this. It was presently vacant. So that's where we are right now.
And then there's another one from Ben, wondering about the possibility of purchasing buildings and keeping them for permanent housing, like a lot of these new buildings that we're using for this process. Instead of it being short-term, is it possible to keep them and turn them into permanent housing?
It's a good question. I think, from someone who's typically more involved in the planning for longer term solutions, it is tough to see so much resources going into what is a short-term solution. At the same time, we know that this is truly a crisis and an emergency, and we're having to move so quickly to try and get resources in place for life-saving measures for our community. And so, that's really where we're at right now. I think, I guess, yeah, that's all I could say about it.
And so another one, and I appreciate, Courtney, thank you for answering that. If you guys have answers, feel free to answer each other, but I will also pull these directly to Angie. There's a question from Liz from City Baca's office, wondering what kind of outreach and engagement is happening with folks in encampments.
Yeah. So our Denver Street Outreach Collaborative is still active in the community. They are focusing a lot on people who are somewhat known to them, in that there's existing relationship, and trying to really focus their efforts on people who they know that they're working with on a housing solution, short-term or long-term. So they've really tried to prioritize their efforts on how do we help get people connected to housing and quickly, so that we know the safest place to be during all this is in your own home. And so how are we helping to get people connected to housing? There's ongoing outreach to try and also get people connected with shelter and services. There's additional support coming through the Department of Public Health and Environment. They've got a program called the Wellness Winnie. It's a Winnebago that's been outfitted for behavioral health services and distribution, needle exchange, distribution of sort of public health supplies and information. And they've been out as well, letting people know about the virus, giving information in English and Spanish about hygiene and washing hands. They've been passing out maps to places where you can wash your hands, information about food bank and meal distribution, things like that. So, sort of joint process between our partners in street outreach as well as our partners in public health and environment.
All right, so I have one more question before you can go on to your next
Okay.
referral and testing. And shout out, Angie. This is not easy. We thoroughly appreciate you sharing all the info for that.
Sure.
Talking and about to talk.
Yeah.
So another one from Liz: are the housing units above Crossroads Shelter currently being used or under consideration for use?
I don't have any information on that. I'm sorry, Liz. I'll have to check in and get back to you.
Okay. All right. And then Courtney already answered the question about respite beds and how yes, folks are being served meals, they're being given medical care, they're being kept an eye, taken care of. And so then Angie, if you want to go on to more of the kind of coordination and referral and testing process, that'd be awesome.
Super. Yeah, so a couple of other things to touch base on. So testing. Unfortunately, I don't know a ton about this process. I know a lot of it's really being managed through the Emergency Operations Center, sort of the healthcare side of things. But on the homeless side of things, we've been in close coordination with both Denver Health and Stout Street Health Center. So, the Denver Health Nurse Line is open and available to any resident of Denver 24 hours a day. So folks experiencing symptoms where they're not sure, should I be tested or not? Obviously, folks should be reaching out to their primary care docs if they have one. If not, the Nurse Line is a great starting point to sort of be screened and assessed for whether testing is necessary. Folks are also able to arrive at the Stout Street Health Center or Denver Health for sort of urgent care clinics to be assessed there for whether COVID testing is necessary. So testing is happening. And again, if someone's experiencing homelessness, doesn't have a place where they can safely isolate during the sort of period of time where they're waiting to get test results back, then that's where the referral to activated respite would come in. So in terms of general population, timing, who gets tests, who doesn't, unfortunately, I don't have a lot of information on that. Diane, I sent you a link just right before this meeting started. I don't know if you saw it. I also don't know if it would make sense to share it on the screen, but City of Denver, just on denvergov.org, we've got a COVID-19 resources page, and it's being updated regularly. And it's full of a lot of these detailed information. The FAQ about, what does it mean? What does the shelter in place order or the stay-at-home order mean? What does it mean for my essential duties? Things like, how do I get rental assistance? What about property tax relief? What about unemployment benefits? So it's really a clearinghouse for all of that information, as well as information from public health and environment about, how do I stay safe if I have this? How do I keep my family safe? All those sorts of things. So it really is the central resource for the most up-to-date information from the City of Denver, and want to make sure to point everybody to that. So we'll see if we're able to get that up on the screen, but even if not, we'll send it out to everybody. So that's, there it is. So lots of information there. A couple of things that have proven to be challenging for everyone is just supplies. So personal protective equipment, as well as just adequate disinfecting supplies. There's been a global supply chain shortage. And so we're working hard as the city. Our entire procurement team is looking everywhere for all different supplies. And we are serving as sort of a centralized place to receive sort of the updated needs list from our homeless service providers to try and help coordinate, who isn't able to get toilet paper? Let's see, do we have toilet paper? Let's get toilet paper delivered out to the agencies. We got a small supply of masks that we were able to help deliver to some agencies to help with some personal protective equipment. But we're working on some centralized supply distribution. We know that our partners at Downtown Denver Partnership also did a supply drive over the weekend, and we're working now to get those distributed out to agencies. Just working to try and make sure that our homeless service agencies on the front lines are also working able to have the resources they need to keep safely providing services to folks. Let's see, in terms of coordination, so some things that are happening. We, as a department leadership, they are having a daily phone call with the leaders of some of our large homeless service provider agencies. So really close daily coordination about what are they seeing on the ground in their facilities, what are their needs, how are we coordinating together. There are conversations happening about additional resources that we need to put into place. So I know folks have a lot of questions about, should we be buying motels? Should we be moving into schools and rec centers and different things like that? And so just to say, yes, all of these things are being discussed, and we're trying to figure out what the right next options are. Unfortunately, I don't have more to share about that yet today, but imagine in the coming weeks, we may have even more resources to bring to bear to help as we continue to address this and keep people safe. There's also been a weekly call with leadership of Denver area homeless service providers. So not just the large agencies, but some of our smaller agencies, that are serving 50 and 60 people at a time. Have been on that call as well. And that's a call facilitated by my director, Chris Connor, as well as one of the directors of Denver Public Health and Environment, Danica Lee. So that's been a weekly call just to make sure that we're keeping everyone updated on, coordination from a public health perspective, as well as with the lens on homeless services. And then, like I said, I've been sending out a daily update with closures, changes to programs, things like that. And then just citywide, there have been a lot of new resources put into place. We've made the decision, Mayor Hancock directed his sheriff's department not to prioritize helping with serving paperwork for any evictions during this time. Excel Energy is not, turning off utilities for people at this time. Colorado Renters Association just put up some new resources. I think I saw them come through last night. City of Denver tenant temporary rental and utility assistance program is up and running. So lots of resources in place to try and help get folks through this time. And again, a lot of those links are available through that webpage on denvergov.org. Okay, I'm going to take a deep breath and pause again and maybe give 10 or 15 minutes to answer additional questions, maybe not even that long, because I know we have a lot more people to speak and to get through.
Yeah, so I have a question wondering if people are interested getting in on that call with Chris Connor, how do they get invited?
Why don't you shoot me an email and we'll see what we can do. I know it's primarily for leadership of agencies, and so there may be folks who your directors on the call versus people who are managing programs. I mean, that is one thing I'll say right now. It's so important that if there's something you're not sure about, checking in with the leadership of your agency, because they may be getting some of the most up-to-date information.
Thanks. There's a question about sweeps that are they stopping during this time?
So I have not seen any, I've not seen anything come out that says there will be no enforcement of unauthorized camping ordinance. So there's not been any official thing that's come out that has said we are not enforcing. At the same time, I have heard and seen the direction that we are not focusing enforcement of lower level offenses at the moment. We're trying not to focus enforcement in those areas. I know there are a lot of conversations happening around this issue. I don't think there's anything official to announce at this time, but I know it is a topic that's on people's minds and how we figure out how to best approach folks who are staying outside and their safety and well-being during this time as well. So I guess that's kind of all I could say.
Yeah, thanks, Ange. And another question, it's long, so I'm gonna just read it. DSOC's work in the encampments. What are the messages going down to staff on the ground in DPD, DDPHE, so that's Denver Police Department, Denver Department of Public Health and Environment, and OTI, which I don't know what that is, regarding encampments, for example,
Yeah.
keeping people in place, not issuing move-on orders, providing additional sanitation supports, so along those lines.
Yeah. So again, yeah, Liz, I think probably best for Councilwoman Sitabaca to that level of question probably through the EOC in terms of what's the coordination looking like through all of those different city departments. I don't have a bird's eye view of what that's looking like across all of those agencies, other than just knowing that everybody is working together. They have increased the number of hand washing stations throughout the city. Public health has been out to sort of assess where those would be most useful in partnership with our homeless service agencies. Not sure though about additional sanitation supports, specifically what that means or where those might be at.
Yeah, and I think, Angie, that might be all we have on there for now. I could say that those daily updates that you've been sending out are really very helpful. So thank you for doing that. And we've been posting them on the MDHI website. That's in the chat as well. And you can also just go to mdhi.org to see that. So we're posting that for the community. And I'll be reaching out to all you outside of Denver to kind of mimic what Angie's doing for the regional partners, so we can have that on the website as well. I'll remind you guys again about that at the end of today's meeting. But yeah, those are super helpful. And so Angie, I think, I don't know, some of the overarching things I'm hearing is that there's, you know, just with all the coordination going on, all the partners, Denver's really ramping up what they're expecting for this response. But if people are concerned, calling that Denver Health's nursing line, going to Stout Street Health Center is useful. And if you are already at a shelter or at a provider, they're able to make a referral if it's screened and appropriate.
Yep, that's exactly. Thank you for that summary.
Yeah.
All
I mean,
right.
it's so much bigger than that, but those are the like initial basics.
Yep, for sure. All right, so we're going to move on to hear what's going on in Jefferson County. Kelly Barker, if you want to share with us what you all are working on.
I know Kelly's on here. Go ahead and unmute yourself, Kelly, if you can.
Or maybe why don't we go ahead and
Yeah.
Sam Olson, are you available to share about Adams County?
And Sam's face was on here just a moment ago.
Let's see, Shelley McKittrick.
So Shelly was going to come in after 10, so she's probably not on here yet.
Okay. Cool. Kristen Toombs.
Oh, hold on. Kelly's ready.
Okay.
Kelly, usually if you just hit it, if you're on your phone, you can just hit it on your phone or on your picture. There's a little mute button, like right there, where you can mute and unmute it. Huh. All right, let me see if I can, Kelly Barker, unmute. That may have worked.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yay!
Yeah. Yeah, sorry, I don't see my name anywhere, but anyway, I must have it in the wrong setting or something. But yeah, so regarding Jefferson County, so we don't currently have any alternative care site, motel system, anything set up for COVID symptomatic or COVID positive people who are experiencing homelessness yet in the county. We're currently working on that and exploring options. We've spent the last couple of days reaching out to motels and trying to negotiate with varied success. So I think we have a few, so we're probably thinking the first thing deployed would be purchasing or master leasing a block of motel rooms most likely. So I'm just working on trying to get all the different services in place for that, which is a lot. And so yeah, that's just kind of what we're working on. So I'm hoping something like that will in the next couple of days will come to fruition. We had a call with most of our service providers, homeless service providers yesterday, and everybody said they haven't really seen anybody who's symptomatic. There's a few people who have seen symptomatic people, a few folks they isolated in shelter and then tested negative. Not that I've heard of. There's been no confirmed positive individuals. But we want to plan for some sort of response in case there are. We don't have very many congregate overnight shelters in Jeffco either, unlike Boulder and Denver. But we are working with those that we do have to help. Public health really has been reaching out with them, and I've been providing them with information on best practices around quarantining and disinfecting and trying to support them until we have another option countywide to house them. Public health is also working with me to plan for unsheltered outreach and education. And then public health has reached out to most of the motels that we typically use just for severe weather and whatnot, or mostly along the Colfax corridor, West Colfax, to provide training and education and support around proper disinfection policies or protocols, so that if and when should we need block one of their motels for use for quarantine or isolation housing, that they will have those protocols in place if they don't already. Let's see. So we're also exploring the need for a congregate site or an alternative care site or whatnot. Sort of like the CRC, and have been working with Boulder to get a lot of their information. So I'm appreciative of, I think it's Jocelyn, who our EOC has been working with. And so we are exploring that and the possible need for it. And then kind of we've been working with a service provider to put together a plan, a service plan. They would provide management of the shelter if and when that should be activated. So that's really great. So I'm just really working on standing up these plans so that if and when Jefferson County decides to pull the trigger on these, we can have these in place and have everything lined up. The other thing is a lot of our service providers are, much like everyone, are really short on volunteers. And so we have had some good success with, I always forget the order, the Help Colorado Now or Colorado Help Now, whatever the state site. So a couple of our service providers have entered their volunteer needs, and they're within the same day gotten a really long list of volunteers in their area, and have had good success with finding some people to meet their needs. And then Severe Weather Shelter Network is closed most likely. I saw Lynn Ann's on the call, and they're closed most likely through the end of the season, because they are largely dependent on volunteers, many of whom are in the high-risk category for COVID. Evergreen Shelter Program is open. They actually were able to secure a permanent/temporary site for their shelter, and they're really severe weather shelter as well, but their severe weather is called almost every day because of the temperature differences up there. So they are actually the shelter that's experienced most people with symptoms and having challenges getting people tested. Stride is our main source here in Jeffco that is able to provide tests, and we're working with them. Obviously, just like everyone else, they're very, very limited on tests available, and so their criteria for who gets tested is very narrow. So most of our folks aren't getting tested. So we're trying to support them in proper quarantine procedures, and if and when the county can offer motel options for housing. I think those are the main points of kind of what we're working on, what's going on in Jeffco. So I don't know if there's any questions or.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't seen any questions, but Kelly, that's really helpful. And I know it is definitely just different in Jeffco where there aren't the overnight shelters, outside of a small program here and there. But it's exciting to hear that about Evergreen at the same time hearing that they are seeing symptoms. But yeah, I really appreciate that update. Anybody have any questions for Kelly and Jeffco? We are wondering, there's a question about how Jeffco's funding motel rooms. And I think you said you hadn't figured that out yet, but is there anything else you could say about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be FEMA reimbursed. We're hoping, and we got the protocol for, I think the upfront cost would probably be, I'm not sure if it'd be county dollars or most likely maybe CDBG or CSBG or something. I'm not sure. But yeah, my understanding is FEMA would reimburse those expenses.
Is there any process for referring into Linda mentioned that Family Promise is sheltering in motels right now because they, similarly to Sphere Weather Shelter Network, they use a church model. Sometimes older volunteers, so they were not able to continue doing that, so they're temporarily sheltering in motels. And so if somebody is interested in Family Promises model, it's not an it's an emergency shelter, but it's not like a COVID response shelter, but they can just Promises main number.
Yeah, so to respond to Jesse's question, we don't have a motel system up right now, so there is no process to get a motel room if you're in Jeffco. We don't have that option available. I just said we're working on it, and hopefully we will be doing that soon. And then to your point, we'll kind of make it public how to go about doing that. My guess is we're either going to take referrals directly from hospitals or medical providers and possibly shelter providers, but we're not sure about that yet. Depends on the size of how many motel rooms we have available. Yeah.
Thank you. And Melissa, you're wondering about who's eligible for Family Promise. It's families with children experiencing homelessness. So they do like a diversion, like a rapid resolution process first with people, make sure that shelter is their only option, and then they will work with them. They also have case managers that work with families in the community. So it's families with children, and you could just call their main number.
Diane, I was just going to mention for Family Promise, they're currently not able to intake new families right now. Folks may know their typical program model is to operate within church facilities and to really rely on church volunteers to staff those. And because of, as others have mentioned, a lot of those volunteer groups are generally in a higher risk population group. They've had to move their operations into motel, which is a new cost for them and not something that they're used to doing. And so they're working with the families that they currently have, trying to help those families into longer term housing options, and will intake new families as their current families move out. And so just so folks are aware kind of capacity and don't think that there's a lot of availability there. Just want to level set expectations on that. All right. So it looks like I think we probably are good to move on to Adams County. Kelly, thank you so much for the update from Jefferson. And again, if folks end up thinking of other questions, we'll come back to them specific to Jefferson County. So Sam, I know you had to reboot. Are you back on?
I am. Hello, everyone. It's not a meeting if the technology, has some bumps in the road, but here I am. Can everyone hear me? Yeah.
Yes, you're good.
Okay, awesome. So a few things, a little bit outside of just housing and homelessness. Our Board of County Commissioners and County Manager have started quite a few task forces in response to COVID. And so there are 7 groups that are meeting weekly, and they are covering issues from childcare, healthcare, workforce, and employment. I'm on the Housing Stability Task Force, and so quite a few of our housing and homeless service providers are on that task force as well. And so it's a fairly new group, so we're still figuring out what kind of actions that group might take. The Housing Stability Task Force definitely started with the idea of how can we prevent foreclosures or pause evictions, and also increase any rental assistance that's out there. There's quite a few of us on that task force that will be advocating for more focus on homelessness and helping people who are maybe more at risk because they're without houses. So the backbone agency for this huge task force project is the Rocky Mountain Cradle to Career Partnership, and they used to be called the Adams County Youth Initiative, I believe. And they have a website posted that will have some updates about any progress that the groups are making. And as far as coordination, I mean, we're having ongoing emails with Tri-County Health, with all the municipalities and service providers about, any changes in operations, any opportunities to partner, any needs or gaps in services. And let's see. And as far as emergency management, my division is in the same department as emergency management, so we've been able to be in communication fairly often throughout the weeks. And so we are definitely working with them and seeing how we can better partner with our human services department. Tri-County, they are continuing their syringe access outreach, so we're talking with them, seeing what they might be able to provide for COVID information. So we might be able to offer some sanitation supplies. The county is really looking at our response in 2 ways. So there's the immediate street outreach. How can we head out to our encampments and see, what the needs are, provide them some sanitation supplies, some information on COVID, ways to protect themselves, and what to do if they're feeling ill or experiencing any of the symptoms of COVID. And so we're starting that within our department next week. And so hoping to partner and pretty much complement what Tri-County is already doing in terms of outreach and seeing what areas that aren't covered by Tri-County and how the county can then go into areas and maybe even expand into our municipalities. And then the second approach is still immediate, but this long-term phase to figure out what to do about sheltering. So for folks who are experiencing homelessness and experiencing symptoms of COVID, similar to what has already been mentioned, we're looking into what it might look like if we blocked out some rooms at a hotel, if we purchased an entire hotel for the time being, if we, we're exploring what county-owned buildings we might be able to use. We do have about 500 cots and partitions available through our emergency management office. So we do have resources for shelter. It's just trying to figure out what makes sense for location and accessibility for folks. That's pretty much A lot is still in progress. Really hoping that we start outreach next week, start talking to folks and making sure that people are feeling well, and making sure that as much to their abilities to have some social distance. And I'm also looking into how we can include some sanitation stations along our trails. But other than that, there's just a lot of conversation, just nothing too set in stone with our response or sheltering opportunities at this time.
Sam, that's awesome. I'm glad to hear that you guys are getting so coordinated and working so hard together. A quick question from me. I didn't see one in the chat yet. Is there is there a recommendation for folks in the community, either experiencing homelessness or at risk, bouncing around, that if they are feeling symptomatic, where are their first places to go?
Yeah, so I had that question for Tri-County, because they have been doing outreach and talking about COVID with folks. And so I asked how they've been addressing that, and they say pretty much what CDC has been saying. And I guess there's a state phone line if people are feeling any symptoms. They also referred me to just let people know, like call urgent cares in advance to talk to someone, and then see about going into urgent care or the ER, because Adams County, we have limited resources. That's probably what we'll end up doing. I still have to kind of sift through all of that. Our default is basically using 211. And so I just found out that 211 is getting a little bit more expansive with COVID responses and resources. So I'm hoping that could also be useful for this time.
Yeah, thank you. I have a question in the chat for you. Are any Adams County seasonal shelters looking to extend their season to help manage the crisis need?
So Cold Weather Care, they are operating out of a hotel because of churches being closed down and volunteers, trying to keep themselves safe and other people safe. They have moved into a hotel, and I think they're actually closing 1 week early, just because being in hotels is a much more expensive method as going into rotation for churches. So unfortunately, they are closing, I believe, a week earlier. Our severe weather activation plan is operating as is, so that will go until April 30th, where folks can seek assistance for a hotel motel stay if winter conditions reach the standards. And I mean, Access Housing and Almost Home, they are operating as is, but they I believe are pretty full and have their waiting list. So, responding to COVID is pretty difficult when you're already still so full. I'm getting some updates from Almost Home and Access Housing. Access Housing will be ramping up their rental assistance starting next week, and we'll be doing some targeted outreach in Commerce City. They're working with their city's emergency management to make sure they are able to talk to as many people as possible. And then, and so our shelters do remain open, that they're definitely targeting the rental assistance programs that they can look to expand on and really focus on. So that's that.
And Sam, you do have a brand new program in Adams County that's piloting right now, your SWAP, which isn't a COVID response, but is a severe weather response.
Mm-hmm.
Activating tonight.
It is. Yep.
Yeah, right.
So that's operating as is. Because our county buildings are closed for the next few weeks. Almost Home will be our location for assessments, so people can head up to Almost Home in Brighton. It is a bit far, but the hotels that we've been able to partner with for swap are in Brighton, so it actually works pretty well. And it sounds like they haven't really had any changes in how many people are accessing the program, which is great. I will say too, our Department of Community Safety and Wellbeing has also a new program with park rangers, and so our park ranger supervisor will be heading up our outreach and building that rapport with folks and making sure people are safe and healthy, all that stuff. So that's an exciting partnership and new program that we're working with as well.
Wonderful, Sam. Thank you so much for all those updates and all the things you and all of these Adams County agencies are working on. Looks like, yeah, and as Alex said, thanks for being such a rock star for Adams, Sam. True story.
Thanks. Kind words.
All right, let's see. Shelley, are you still on with us?
I am. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear. Thanks.
Woo! Okay, you can't see me though. I'm not down with that right now.
All right.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. So here we go. Aurora is crazy like everyone else right now. The city has a daily 3 o'clock COVID response meeting. So every day we are gathering on the phone and sharing updates, and I'm really proud of the city and how we're responding to the crisis from a homelessness perspective. I'm going to start with Mile High Behavioral Healthcare, who run Comitas and the Aurora Day Resource Center and carry out outreach activities. So Comitas is open for business as usual on regular days. We are activated tonight for cold weather, so we'll be taking overflow, but they have a social distancing plan in place. So the Aurora Day Resource Center will be activated tonight, and during the day on regular days, they're limiting the number of folks that can come into the Day Resource Center at a time to 50. It's a very large building, so that allows for appropriate social distancing. And then when somebody leaves, we have someone else can come in. They, with city support, the ADRC, the Day Resource Center, I'll say ADRC from here on out, has set up 2 large winter weather wedding tents with heat and lighting and porta potties outside with hand sanitizer. And that is a social distancing strategy that they've used. So when people can't come into the ADRC yet because of the limit on how many can come in, they can be in the tents outside and have some support outside until they can come in. The ADRC is on reduced hours from 7:30 a.m. to 1 p.m. for general come in, take a shower, get some food. They're serving breakfast on site and grab and go lunches. And then in the afternoons, they're doing by appointment case management meetings. So they are still there, but with just very few people in the building doing far apart one-on-ones. They are activated tonight. So if you have folks who are in Aurora looking for shelter tonight, they should go to the Aurora Day Resource Center on the corner of 19th Place and Wheeling on the Fitzsimmons campus. I really just want to say how grateful I am to Mile High Behavioral Healthcare because they got ahead of this and actually got the tents up before anybody else was thinking about it. They got hand washing stations outside before they were all gone, things like that. So I'm really grateful to them as a partner for being ahead of the curve. They've been set up for well over a week. Yeah, it's been over a week since that's all been set up. We're very worried about, let me cover Gateway. Gateway Domestic Violence Services open for business and activating as usual. An anecdote I heard from James Gillespie, which isn't a good anecdote, but they had a woman call who was wanting to actively flee, and then when she thought about the sheltering opportunity in COVID-19, she decided to stay at home with the danger she knew better. And I think that is an unfortunate choice that people are making right now. And I also read an article somewhere about an uptick in domestic violence incidents in general. People are stuck at home together, they're stressed out, they're losing their jobs. So that's concerning. I'm worried about the same thing around domestic violence or other types of trauma-induced behavior issues that people might have and then wind up losing their opportunity for shelter or motels or things. We are getting a lot of requests from the actual motel management of folks, the Colfax motels and others like that aren't necessarily on Colfax, with folks that have lost their jobs or their income right now, and they're not able to pay for their motels, and they're already on the edge of losing their motel rooms. So we're focusing our efforts right now around eviction on our motel dwellers, so that because they're not necessarily covered by the eviction stays. And even if we could argue that they are, it would be a huge debacle to try and talk the motels into that. So I'm working with the motels, one of them, the Summit View, the no longer Kings Inn and no longer those owners that bought Kings Inn, new owners have taken over. That manager has set up a Google Doc so that all the other motel managers can call into her and, without disclosing names, tell us what their tenant needs are around this. And then the city is working on getting discounted rates for a monthly rate for those folks so that we can keep them inside and safe and not outside on the street and being at higher risk for exposure. The House Aurora Partnership will be open for business on probably Monday for rehousing and limited eviction prevention services for folks who are leased up. And we will work with those folks after the fact. But right now, if we can, we want to get as many literal homeless folks or folks that are able to lease up right now on their own into their own housing so they're safe inside, and we can get other folks into the more emergency settings. Aurora Warms the Night is operating. They don't have their volunteers, but they do have their staff, and I'm going to move over to our quarantining plans. And Sam, I'll reach out to you today. There's been some higher level talks started last night, actually, with Adams County and Arapahoe County. We have found a hotel who actually reached out to Arapahoe County proactively. They sent it on to me, and we're in the final stages of negotiating the entire 122 room motel for quarantining opportunities. There are already 7 inpatients at University Hospital who are COVID positive, who will need to be discharged into quarantine next week or the coming weeks after that. One is ready to go now, and they're holding them in the hospital because they still have room as of today until we have the quarantine room set up. We're hoping maybe by Tuesday. I think Monday is unrealistic. This hotel, I'm not going to disclose where it is yet until we have an actual lease signed, but they have multiple motels in the region, so they can move anybody that's in this hotel right now to one of their others, and it will be emptied out and turned over to us, yay, for managing. So one of the challenges we're facing right now is how do we staff the hotel? And I'm going to be working on that now that we're really close to a deal today, working, I think, with Comitas probably, because they are already practicing frontline sheltering work and seeing if they might be able to work with us to staff that motel. There's a possibility, if this goes on for more than 2 months, the need for quarantine, that we could move over to the Excelsior campus where the goals program is with Family Tree. It wasn't possible to get some empty buildings there stood up as fast as we know we're going to have referrals waiting to come in. And we had a hotel online, so we're going to go ahead, move forth with the hotel. But if it goes on for longer and we can transition folks over to either the AmeriCorps housing on the Excelsior campus, because that's been closed for a while now, or one of Family Tree's buildings that hasn't been opened up yet for the goals program. They're very interested in providing that. It was just a little bit more of a logistical problem to set it up so quickly. So we should have quarantine housing available early next week. And I'm hoping that we're going to partner with Arapahoe and Adams County, because it's more rooms than we can afford or will probably need. But I think if we looked at the Tri-County area first, we could get pretty close to filling at least half of that pretty soon, I think. I mean, I'm just guessing, but you know. And then we would be very open to working with other communities that could contribute to the cost per night of running this, to help us offset the cost that it's, you know, the entire building is going to be a pretty good chunk of change. To lease that. The hotel well maintained though, and this is the reason we really like this idea, that, you know, all the services like Wi-Fi and garbage and maintenance for the building, they're going to maintain all that, and it'll be part of the lease agreement, and we will provide the on-site oversight staffing. The city will provide the funding, and we're hoping to find partners who can help us staff it. So if anybody has any great ideas, let me know. So as far as the funding from the federal bill, it's going to impact all of us in a very positive way that are entitlement cities and counties. The city of Aurora has projected that we're going to get about $1.7 million additional dollars in ESG funding for the crisis, and that will help to offset all of these, you know, the quarantining and all of, we're paying for pretty much all of the extra services needed over on the Fitzsimmons campus. So it's going to help us continue those services as long as needed. And, you know, as soon as we have definitive numbers, these are the, you know, our local intergovernmental affairs folks figured out the 1.7 million. That's for ESG, and then I think it's about the same for CDBG. So we're going to have a pretty good influx of money, but it's going to go out quickly. We had a big Aurora at Home governing board meeting this morning, and you know, I think we're going to start having a weekly call for Aurora at Home members to collaborate around, and more often if necessary, but set up a weekly call for people for coordination in the city. We're a little behind the mark on that one, but it's happening now. Ready to Work is open and operating, but not taking any new referrals to keep their current residents safe. And the same with Goals. They have 5 families in the Goals program, and they don't expect to have a lot of movement there over the next couple of months. What else?
Deep breath. That was great.
Yeah, and if anybody has any questions, I would say please don't call me, shoot me an email. I can't keep up with my voicemails right now. If you have my cell, you can text me. Everybody's welcome to my cell, but just reach out to me. I'm seeing something. Oh, testing. I was just looking at some of the comments. Stride, I think, is going to be our best buddy around testing in the homelessness community. So the 30th and Peoria site is doing testing today. They are spending the morning testing healthcare providers and the afternoon for anyone else, regardless of whether they have a doctor's note for a test, can get in line until the tests run out this afternoon. I suspect they're going to run out pretty quickly. I don't know. I think they might be checking to make sure that there are symptoms, not just screening. You know, we don't have screening ability right now, unfortunately, but we have symptomatic testing. We don't have any known positive test results in our sheltered community right now, but I think we need to really emphasize any known infections. They have been, Comitas has been working with CU, and anytime they have someone symptomatic, they're coming over and doing a rapid flu test. And that way, if they're positive for flu, it helps everybody to relax a little bit. They do have influenza in the shelters right now. So that's been a positive confirmation. Working with CU Hospital, Children's, and the VA. I talked to Michelle Lapidow earlier. anyone on the call from the VA or SSVF program, please let me know if you have folks that need quarantine. As far as being able to spread folks out, you know, elderly folks or folks with high risk conditions, if you have somebody that's in Aurora and really connected to Aurora in that situation, please reach out to me, because I will definitely find a way to get them into a safe spot. Most of the older folks in the Comitas community want to stay there in their community. They're not asking to be put somewhere else. They're very much part of the shelter community, so they're doing all right, and they're doing some social distancing at the shelter. I think that might be all I can think
Great.
of.
Thanks so much, Shelley. We'll continue to track questions in group chat, and if you want to respond to people by text there, if there are more. I know we still have a few more folks to get through in the next half hour, so want to hear from Kristen from the state. We're going to hear from Missy with VA. Cameron, if you've got a brief update on Arapahoe County, and then want to hear as well from Matt and Jamie with MDHI. So for those still in queue, that's kind of who we're looking to get to in the next half hour. So Kristen, are you on and happy to talk?
Perhaps we should go to the VA. I don't see Kristen's name on here at the moment.
Okay, great. Missy, do you want to take over for the VA?
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yay, we can.
Yay! Good morning, everyone. So just a couple of updates from the VA. The VA has stood up a VA mobile testing site outside our VA, so that opened up yesterday. So folks who are veterans who are needing to get tested can actually drive up and get tested. And also our VA lab is now starting to actually process the COVID tests, which seems to be returning the results much quicker than sending them to CDPHE, which is fantastic. That also started, I believe, as of yesterday. More specifically, in terms of HUD-VASH, we've been really working closely with our SSVF partners as they received an influx of money to work with their local VAs and partners to identify who are those veterans that are eligible for SSVF that are over 60 and or having complicated medical histories that would be extra vulnerable to be in public shelters or living publicly. And so we have a list of about 35 or 36 veterans that we're actively outreaching and getting them enrolled in SSVF to get them into hotels. So as of this week, we have started placing folks into area motels funded through SSVF. And kind of are connecting with our SSVF partners multiple times a week to kind of case conference those and make sure that those folks are getting into the motels, getting through the process, and then ultimately really making sure we're wrapping services around them so that the motel is not their last stop. And so that's been fantastic. Our SSVF partners have really come to the table and wrapped their arms around this, so that's been great. We also continue our HUD-VASH intakes and screenings and moving folks into housing through HUD-VASH. Our HUD-VASH housing team has done a fantastic job continuing to operate as housing authorities have changed their procedures, and many of their offices have shut down, and so have found alternate ways to inspect units and get through the process with the understanding that some paperwork with signatures can either be signed by VA staff with the permission of the veteran, or those signatures can be turned in at a later date. So we're still continuing to house people in permanent housing, which is a much better solution all around. We also continue to refer folks to our Abrigo property that Community Solutions owns and where we place veterans into for permanent housing. So we continue to try as much as we can to really stay focused on the permanent housing for folks and really staying connected to those people that we're working with towards permanent housing solutions. The CRC is still open for business, and we're at 38th and York, right behind Inner City Health. We are really trying to screen people. I mean, everybody before they come in the building is being screened, but we're also really trying to encourage folks to call our facility ahead of time, because we're doing so much screening over the phone. There's a chance that people don't even need to come into our building. So I'm trying to put our number out there as much as possible. If you have a veteran, whether they're currently enrolled in the VA or need to get enrolled or engaged in the VA, please encourage them to call our front desk. And I'll post that number in the chat box again. And it's also on the MDHI page, as well as Angie's been sending it out with her weekly email, or her daily emails as well. Because there's a lot of work we can do with veterans over the phone that don't need to be seen face to face. Our showers are also still open, so we do have a handful of guys that are still coming in every day, because this is one of the few places where they can take a shower and get cleaned. And our staff is really dedicated and bound and determined to make sure that our showers can stay open for those guys that are out there. A lot of them are still working in different construction sites and that kind of stuff. So it's really important for them to come in and get a shower at the beginning of their day. And we are, because we're the VA and we don't get discretionary money for things like hotels, we are still really needing and wanting to partner, like Shelley mentioned, with our local community partners when we have somebody who might need to isolate or quarantine, that we might be approaching either Denver or Aurora for those veterans. We are trying to secure through our contracting office a handful of motels that we could use, but because of the VA bureaucracy, that's probably a little bit slower than any of us would like that to happen. But we are actively working towards that, and we'll see how that plays out over the next couple of days and weeks. I think that is kind of the quick and dirty from the VA, but I encourage in this crisis for people still to be asking veterans, or people if they are veterans, and if they're saying yes, please encourage them to reach out to us, because we are still trying to find and identify and get DD-214s ordered for people and get them into our services as much as we can during this time.
Wonderful. Thank you, Missy. I think that's really fantastic hearing about the influx of SSVF funding and the creative work happening to get older veterans out of risk immediately. So I think Kristen Toombs from the state is on now. So Kristen, do you want to give us an update on what's happening statewide?
Might need to do.
I unmuted you. You're good to go.
Hear me? Okay. Thanks. Hi, everybody. So again, this is Kristen Toombs. I'm the director of the Office of Homeless Initiatives at the state of Colorado. I'm also the point for the Division of Housing for our emergency response to COVID-19 at the state. And so I'm working a lot of my typical day-to-day work at the Office of Homeless Initiatives is still being done by many at the Division of Housing, and you can contact me, but I might direct you to somebody else at the Division of Housing. Really what we're trying to do is partner with the rest of the emergency response at the state level, but then also help coordinate you all at the local level as best we can and support you as best we can. I'm gonna put in the chat one of the things we've been hearing from folks a lot, and I know I need to get you guys, there's lots of information we still want to get out, but we have created a website. I just put it in the chat box. It's cdola.colorado.gov. And if you go there, there is a link specifically for housing and COVID-19. Oh, Diane, you're good. All right, yes, you can see it's right there, the top left menu. And as you scroll down, you'll see that what we're really trying to do is get you guys information, not create necessarily more, because if any of you are like me, you're getting lots from HUD and others, which is great. And so we want to use those. So yep, if you click on that link, you'll see we have the webinar that we did earlier, but then we have a lot of things from HUD. Please know, I think many of you know that HUD has now a daily email for folks to jump on, and I apologize if this has already gotten talked about, but that's where we will pull a lot of our guidance and recommendation that comes from HUD. We do have a few things that have come from from Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, or CDPHE. And so you will see some of those are up. Again, what we are trying to do is default to looking at what is official guidance that is coming from public health entities or other housing entities at the national level that we are wanting to loop in. So again, many of these things, some of you will say, oh, I've already seen that. But we do want to encourage people to look to those guidance documents first. With that said, we are hearing that there are some things that just, those documents aren't quite fitting for Colorado or for your unique community or program. And so definitely in touch with folks about getting some of that guidance out there. So for example, one of the things we're working on right now is how to access FEMA public assistance to create non-congregate sheltering. So stay tuned for that. I'm just waiting for FEMA's actually working on putting together a template for everybody that just makes it really easy to be able to ask for those resources. So we will be having that coming out to you as soon as we have it. The key for now is if anybody is, the key to know is that FEMA has acknowledged that with this situation that we cannot have our typical sheltering, congregate sheltering response to this emergency like we would with, let's say, maybe a fire. And so they are able to reimburse non-congregate shelters that we need. We are working on getting exactly that, as much guidance to you all as possible. But for now, please do communicate with your local public health department at your county and to your emergency response. And I know MDHI knows those folks. And so I would just recommend that before you move forward trying to cover the costs of any non-congregate sheltering options, that you loop in your emergency and public health folks. So stay tuned for that. If there are other things that when you look on our website or guidance that you guys are wanting, please let me know. You can email me. I think folks have it, but here I'm going to put it in the chat. Just to see, and I'll do my best to see how quickly we can get some guidance up or get you some information. If you also need help connecting the dots with people, we can do that. I work very closely with our human services partners who are leading the emergency response for human services needs. And so we can pull them in, and same with public health contacts. So please don't hesitate to reach out. I have a lot of emails, so I do my best to get to you quickly, but just know there could be a delay. I'm going to pause and see there are some questions in the chat.
Yeah, Randall is wondering about AICI, which isn't quite COVID, but he's asked a few times.
Yeah.
The status of AICI.
So thanks, Randall. So AICI is the Advisory Council on Homeless Youth, and it has been facilitated by the Division of Housing, specifically through our Office of Homeless Youth Services. That position was vacated. Cheryl Sikorsky was in that for a couple of years, and she moved on to another position in the state. And so we are hoping to fill that position very soon. And so we had put that on hold in the end of 2019 because of the holidays, because that meeting fell when the holidays were. And then in 2020, we have not resumed it from a bandwidth perspective, mainly from COVID. So hang on tight.
And then can you see the one from Liz? Would you like me to read it?
I can see them, yeah. I see Randall had another question about what are we doing with hotels? Yes, so we're working with local entities to see, to identify hotels and to work with local partners on various ways to access hotels. So there's a couple different ways that it can happen, that communities can find someone who can master lease, maybe a block, maybe a floor, maybe the whole building. As you guys can imagine, hotels are not really being used right now for obvious reasons. So how can we utilize those? The cost for that, again, that's where you want to work with emergency and public health, because then you could get that reimbursed up to 75% from FEMA, but you have to get that pre-approval from FEMA in order to do that. You can also, we're also working with some communities around actually acquiring hotels or motels. and utilizing those. So we're looking at it from a non-congregate sheltering perspective for people who are asymptomatic, symptomatic, need to be isolated, need to be quarantined, but don't necessarily need to be hospitalized or coming out of hospitals. As a state, we are also looking at what assets can we utilize for medical surge. That includes people experiencing homelessness, but anybody in the state, regardless of housing status, that if we're going to need more medical beds at various levels, what does that look like? So nothing, there will be more information coming out from the state about what that medical surge plan looks like. So I don't want to get ahead of that, but I know they're looking at state properties, other assets, and hotels and motels are on that list. Oh, yes. So thanks, Liz. When will the Emergency Eviction Assistance Fund from the state be operational? When will info be up on how we can access it? And all of those good details. Yes, so I am thankful that I have some colleagues at the Division of Housing who are working hard on all of those details. So we hope to have that out any day. The aim is that we are looking at where possible we can utilize existing contracted partners who do prevention work. We are also looking at do we need to pull in others in order to make sure that we do reach all 64 counties and that we can also provide mortgage assistance or foreclosure assistance. So stay tuned. In the executive order that the governor did on Friday last week, how is that only a week ago? Oh my gosh. It feels like a long time, doesn't it? So in that executive order, it does state preferences around low income and those who did have employment and have lost it because of COVID. So there are some things in the executive order that put in some parameters that we'll have to follow, but we know that there are other details. So stay tuned. So Randall, youth statewide AICI, yes, Randall, right now AICI is just unfortunately on hold. So stay tuned. We know that we want to incorporate youth into that. So I think that's what you're referring to there. I am not sure what Bayard is working on with Laura, so I will defer to her on that.
Kristen, I think that might be all of the
That might be all of them. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. And that website is really helpful. We'll make sure to get that out to everyone.
Great.
We put it in the chat as well. But thank you so
Great.
much for coming through and updating us.
Yeah.
I think, Matt, we're going to move on to updates from MDHI now.
Thank you, Angie, and thank you to everyone. I'm going to be pretty quick about this given time. I know everyone, we've asked for 2 hours of time when everyone has a lot to be doing right now. So I'll go through some quick MDHI updates, and then Jamie will finish us up with talking about the funding appropriations at the federal level. She's been able to do some analysis, and I think it'll be helpful for everyone to know where those funds come from. So MDHI really has 3 priorities right now that we're working on in COVID response. The first is that we're going to continue with coordinated entry one home. It is up and running. It has never stopped running. It is very important that throughout this process that we continue to get people housed. So if your organization is not aware of the continued efforts around coordinated entry, please email Rebecca Meyer at MDHI, and we'll keep things going with all of that. We're doing case conferencing, and the more people we get housed now, obviously the better. It's fewer people in the shelters, on the streets, and so on. The next piece is around coordinating regional efforts and information flow. So it's been very important during this public health crisis that we continue to keep information moving between providers and between providers and public health. So there's a lot of anxiety amongst particularly shelter providers around knowledge of COVID status. We've gotten clear guidance both from HIPAA and from a HUD perspective that we're doing communication. Many of your communities are already outreaching to us. I just want to encourage you guys, if there are issues coming up, HMIS can be very helpful in regards to communicating information as a data platform for all of us. So for example, we've been working very closely with Denver on all of their supplemental shelter and active respite work that we're able to track that in HMIS. We have reached out to many communities about being available for this, but again, I'm just going to say it. If you have a need, if you think it would be helpful, we are happy to adapt HMIS to track your COVID response. The second area is around funding and resources. So we've been contacted by a number of foundations that are interested in using our distribution network through Flex Fund to be able to get immediate dollars out to the COC partners. And we're also, inclusive of, organizations that are not yet COC members. We would ask that they join the COC. And frankly, we would ask that you start using HMIS if you're not currently using HMIS, because we're putting all of that into the Flex Fund tracking into HMIS to help manage with the distribution and more efficient distribution of those funds. We've expanded the scope of our Flex Fund to include prevention, eviction prevention, and frankly, we're just wanting it to be as responsive as possible in the community. The other area is that we are working with our ESG funds. That's the area in terms of our HUD funding that we have the most flexibility. Otherwise, we've received actually pretty clear guidance from HUD that we don't have flexibility with our planning or HMIS dollars to be adapting those to the COVID response. So I'm going to stop there again, just for the sake of time. I want to make sure, I'm sure everyone has interest in the appropriations, and allow Jamie to give you guys a rundown of what we're seeing on the appropriations. I'll just close by saying thank you to everyone. There's been several mentions of the amazing work that the community is doing right now. I just want to echo that. I think you guys, over the last number of weeks, I've been immensely proud to be a part of this community, as you guys are responding with just, stupendous humanity during this crisis. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. Good morning, everyone. This is Jamie Wright from MDHI. I just wanted to go through what's going on right now with the Senate and the House and the funding bill. So it passed the Senate late Wednesday. It is going to the House this morning. Providing there are no delays, it's anticipated that it should pass pretty quickly without any sort of edits. So I kind of wanted to go through what's in the bill right now, just as it relates to our work, and then as well as how it relates to the individuals that we're serving and the role the funding might play for them. So overall, the bill has $12 billion in funding to HUD, including $4 billion for ESG, for homelessness assistance. I will say under this bill, they have waived the match requirements. $2 billion of that should be appropriated within 30 days based on the FY20 allocations. And then the other $2 billion will be based on criteria determined by the HUD secretary. Things like risk of transmission, rates and numbers of unsheltered and sheltered homeless populations, and economic and housing market conditions. And like I said, it dispenses with any existing match requirements. And then there's about another $5 billion in CBDG or CDBG grants, $1.25 billion for housing choice voucher programs, another $1 billion for project-based rental assistance, $685 million for public housing, $300 million for tribal nations, $65 million for HOPWA, $50 million for Section 202 housing for the elderly, and $15 million for Section 811 housing for persons with disabilities. Each of those has kind of different timelines on when they're going to be out. The other thing that you'll probably be hearing a lot about is a moratorium on foreclosures and evictions. That moratorium on foreclosures will go into effect March 18th, it would have been. That's for any federally backed loans, so for mortgages for 60 days. And then there's a moratorium on filing for evictions for renters and homes that are covered by any of those federally based mortgage companies for 120 days from the date that the bill is enacted. And I can, I'll send out, Diane, we can post it with the notes, kind of a summary of all of this, so you guys don't have to frantically write all this down because there's a lot. So that's kind of what we know regarding the large buckets of funding. And the National Low Income Housing Coalition did a really great job of doing a breakdown, so I can send that out as well if you want to read about each of those in depth and what that'll mean. The other thing that, as many of you has probably heard about, is the actual stimulus payment that will be going to individuals. So I think from what I'm reading, it's going to follow a lot of the 2008 stimulus payments that went out with a lot of the same regulations and guidelines, as well as some of the challenges that presents specifically for the population that we're working with. So basically, it's going to be up to $1,200 per person, with $500 per child for anyone earning up to $75,000. I will say the original bill that was proposed did not include any sort of relief for low-income families or low-income individuals, and that was changed in this. So a lot of advocacy happened around that, which was really great. It's based on your AGI for 2019 if you're filed, 2018 if not. Anyone with a social security number is eligible, but that means everyone who files under a tax ID is not eligible for this relief. It is a tax credit, so it won't be taxable on your 2020 income tax. And like I said, it's most likely to follow the 2008 guidance in that people without a taxable income will need to file the free form available on the IRS website, but they've said more guidance is going to be coming out around that, and how they're going to be working to get it to people specifically who may have moved or haven't filed taxes in the last 2 years. And as that comes out, I will be sure to update it as well. A couple of communications pieces just to keep everyone updated. We have created a page on our website that we're updating daily with anything we get from any of the communities regarding community resources. As well as, if you don't follow us on Facebook and Twitter, we're posting a lot on our social media just to get resources out there as quickly as possible. Diane, if you scroll down and go to community resources and the blog right there in the middle. Thanks, Diane. Yes, self-employed individuals are covered under that bill, to my knowledge. Let's see if there's any other questions. Okay, perfect.
Yeah, I don't see any questions in there right now, but I know that we're all very concerned about how our individuals experiencing homelessness and that haven't been filing taxes, and how we can actually make sure people get the money that they need and can use. Jamie's going to be on that, putting it out on our website, on our social media. We'll be sending that directly in newsletters. So we'll make sure that we get all of that information as we find it and research it out to you.
Yeah, and one of the things we're trying to do is send out just one notification a week that has kind of all this information in it synthesized for you, so you're not getting bombarded with emails from us. So thanks for that, Diane. And our website, like I said, we're trying to update that like 6 or 7 times a day, as well as our social media has kind of a live feed of everything that's coming to us. So again, like Matt said, thank you everyone for your coordination. It's been incredible to watch all of you come together and the work that you're doing, and just thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. Thank you for keeping up on all these updates and synthesizing the information so well. It's really a great resource for us to stay tapped into what's happening across the whole community. So thank you for that. I know really quickly, Cameron, was there anything for Arapahoe County that you had hoped to add in? Anything unique for Arapahoe?
I can send an update out to the group later as well, but we are mainly been focusing a lot of efforts on rental assistance just in relation to the COVID crisis. A lot of people in the county have been having issues with paying their rent and their mortgage, so we're really trying to find funds to support those individuals throughout this process. So Shelley's been doing a fantastic job of handling the City of Aurora portion of things, so I could provide a lot of focus to Inglewood, Littleton, Sheridan, the Centennial areas to work with those individuals who are in similar forms of crisis to help them maintain their housing stability.
Great. Yeah, that's so vital. So thank you. Thank you for that update. And for any others, as you know, we are pretty much out of time. And so if you have additional updates, flyers, announcements, things that you wanted to make sure to get out, please send those to Diane, and she'll help get them out via email to this group. So we'll make sure to do that. You'll also notice on the agenda, just wanted to mention as a nice parting thought, my term as chair for this committee is up, and it's time for me to pass the torch that I share with Susie onto someone else. So Susie's staying on as a co-chair, but we need someone else who loves the community, loves helping to be a coordinating point, and who likes to have fun with Diane and Susie to step up and help us with facilitation of this group. So if you have interest, please reach out to Diane. We'll follow up, with you directly and talk more about, what that process looks like or what the time commitment is. So we wanted to just make sure folks knew about that and put the opportunity out there. With that, I'll give the final word to Diane, and then we'll close out.
Yes, Angie, thank you so much for all the facilitation and all the work you're doing in Denver, and similarly, everyone, all the work you're doing, echoing what Matt said. Everyone's stepping up, and it's good to see, and we need you, and thank you. So a quick reminder, so similar to what Angie's doing in Denver, I will be putting together regional updates. So if you are one of the regional points of contact, or if you are the contact for an agency outside of Denver, send me an email update about how, like, the status of your programs. I'll also be reaching out just so we can put that on the website as well and in the newsletter to keep everyone, in touch with how things are going. And we'll, as Jamie said, we're posting daily on the website, on Facebook, but we'll be sending out a weekly newsletter with an update on everything. So if you haven't done it already, you just click this newsletter button and it'll make sure that you're getting everything that we have. And a note to the future, we will be, I don't know how to get that page back up. The Mile High United Way conference centers are closed through at least the end of April. So we know that already now. So we will do this as a Zoom meeting again next month. I will send out the info closer to the date and post it on our website as soon as I can. It'll probably be Monday. I will send out the link for the recording to this, which will be on our committee page, as well as any additional notes or handouts or anything anybody wants to send in to me. And it's good to see some of your faces, even some of your names. Miss you guys, and I hope you take care. And reach out if you need anything.
Thank you so much, Diane. Take care, everybody.